Step in my dojo, you
Step in my dojo, you
step in my.
It's weekly download time. 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 And now we're going to learn some stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about resampling as it applies to workflow. Specifically, we're going to be talking about iterative resampling and some of the reasons why you might want to learn to include iterative resampling in your workflow. So this is, in some ways, at some levels, this is about sound design, but this is more of just a kind of tweak to your workflow that once you start including this resampling process in your workflow, you're going to find yourself kind of making all of these different sample packs while you work. If you are into selling sample packs, that can be very useful. And also, you'll find that you're going to very quickly build up a library of sounds that you'll be able to use in other projects and products, and you'll very quickly start to develop your own sound, and you'll really start to become your own your own sound designer. So you're not going to be relying on sound libraries as much anymore, because you're going to be creating your own sound libraries, and you're going to be doing this as a natural product of the way you work, right? But, I would recommend that you do not do sound design while you're writing if you are a new producer. But if you are comfortable finishing tracks, you've been through the recipes, you know how to get out of the weeds, you know how to use the 5-minute rule, you know how to stop yourself from just getting frustrated by doing sound design. You've gone through some of the other weekly downloads in the sound design series, and you can quickly and easily make a kick sound, you can quickly and easily make a snare sound, etc. Then you're ready to start including resampling in your workflow. And when you do start including resampling in your workflow, you're going to be making these folders of sounds. You're going to have tons and tons of snares that you've made. You're going to have tons of kicks that you made, tons of bass sounds, tons of all kinds of things. And then all of these sounds, you're going to be able to start making your own custom library where you're making your tracks out of your sounds from your folders, and you're going to really start sounding like yourself. You're going to really start not sounding like everyone else who's putting together a bunch of Vengeance or Cymatics or whatever samples from a folder, and rather than simply selecting tastefully the sounds of others, you're going to be making tracks with your own sounds, and you're going to be recycling and improving upon your own sounds each time you produce a track, and then you're going to have sounds to sell, you're going to have sounds in your tracks. It's just going to be great. Okay, this is a big breakthrough for the people that do get to the point in their development that they can use this technique. This technique is an extremely, it's a big change. It's a big change, and it's a massive improvement. And this is you're getting into the workflow of the pros here. You're getting into the workflow of the people that you admire. People like Skrillex or like Virtual Riot. They're doing this all the time. While they're writing. Mr. Bill, he's doing this while he's writing. The people who are operating at the top levels are doing this iterative resampling technique while they're writing, and it's an invaluable technique. Okay, it is incredibly useful, and it will change your fucking life. All right, so that's it for our introduction. So now we're going to go through a little bit of the history of resampling. And we're going to take you on a little field trip. We're going to leave the comfortable domain of Ableton, and we are going to go into the MPC. Oh my goodness, that's not Ableton. This is a whole other world. Yes, the MPC is a fantastic piece of equipment, and it is in a lot of ways a bit more simple than Ableton. It has much less capabilities than Ableton, but there are certain things that the MPC does really well that Ableton still does not do really well. I'll just play this beat that I've prepared. Okay, good times, good times. All right, so the MPC has this amazing feature where you can go into the sampler here. If I just select in the menu and go into the sampler, there's this sampler that is like a recording environment that is separate from the audio channels. You know, if I go here into the main section, I can go to this audio channels section, and there are, you know, different audio tracks, and I can select or create, you know, as many audio tracks as I like, and I can record arm and record into these audio tracks that are in the sequencer. But aside from that, different from the audio tracks in the sequencer is the sampler, okay? And in the sampler, I can go through and select different inputs on my sound card. Anyway, you can select different inputs. I was trying to find the one that the Moog's on. You can't name them like in Ableton, so it's sometimes it's difficult to find which is which. But you can also set it to resampling. And once I set it to resampling, this sampler will sample any sound that is coming from the MPC. And I can set this threshold and then arm this. And here, I'll turn the maximum length up. Let's say turn the maximum sample length up to, like, I don't know, a couple minutes. And when I hit arm, it will not record. It's waiting to. Most of the heavy lifting in the track is done by this one drum kit. A lot of people will just continuously ignore drum sound design for, like, you know, huge portions of their career, and they'll wonder why their music isn't, like, hitting people right, you know? And it's like, we don't want to hear you play someone else's beat. You know, we want to hear your beat. You know, once you know how to make them, and you understand that it's easy, because it is easy once you do the chorus, then your tracks are going to be so much more expressive, and they're going to have a real authentic texture that is undeniably yours, where you can speak and express yourself through the drums. When I hit arm, it will not record. It's waiting to record, but it will not record until I press a key. And then when I press a key over here, oh wait, here, let's go to the main, and I will go to my MIDI channels again, go back to the sampler. If I arm it, then once I hit the sound, it crosses the threshold and it starts recording. And then I get to this window where it's like, hey, what do you want to name this sample? Do you want to keep this sample? Do you want to discard it? And I can go here and I can call this, like, snares. And then hit do it, and then I can hit keep. And then now I have a sample. If I go into my sample editor, I can go in and I can see that here's this sample of me hitting the snares, right? So this is really cool, because when you're doing sound design, a lot of the time, you'll just be hitting a sound over and over again and making small changes to it. And that, a recording of that, can be incredibly useful. Let's say you're working on a synth and you just play the same note and you move, you know, maybe it's the filter knob, or maybe it's a modulator or whatever, and you get a bunch of these different similar recordings of a synth. Having that to cut up later and having that to make instruments out of later is an incredibly useful thing, because when you're doing sound design and the sound is just kind of in place, right? The sound is just kind of in place, then it's like you kind of make pretty timid sound design decisions, you know? This kind of goes back to the Mud Pies thing. Like, if you just have a MIDI channel and your bass is on it, you're not going to go crazy on all the knobs, because you don't want to, like, ruin your sound, quote unquote, right? So you're not going to explore the extreme ends of the knob positions. You're not really going to generate a wide variety within each individual sound, because you're worried about ruining it, right? Whereas this resampling process, when you have a recording going as you're doing the sound design, you can make a whole bunch of different changes to the sound and have all of these different iterations kind of at your fingertips later to be edited into place and create a new riff where there's like different articulations. You know, maybe your bass, instead of just going wah, it's going like wah wah boom boom wah ga 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 zort 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 wah. You know, and you have all of those different types of articulations at your fingertips, and you can chop it up without editing it. Or without having to automate it, right? So this is a really, really cool piece of the workflow that you get with an MPC. And you can get it with the MPC, you can get it with Maschine, and you can get it with FL Studio, but you cannot do this type of resampling in Ableton. So I was going through a bunch of different things with resampling, and one of the best devices that I have ever encountered is this one-shot recorder. Vibe Squad turned me on to this back, God, when I did that track Fireman with him years and years ago. And basically, this one-shot recorder, it had threshold-based sampling. And what Vibe Squad would do is he would put it on his master before the limiter and other mastering type stuff on his master. He would have it on his master, and you know, anytime he was doing sound design, whether it was a hardware synth or a VST synth or whatever, anytime he was doing sound design, he would have this MIDI learned where the record button was MIDI learned, and he would turn it on. It would wait for the sound to cross the threshold. Then you'd play the sound, it would record, and then you just hit the record button again, and it would save it to one of 128 slots in this device. And then, you know, you can MIDI learn the slots and have it basically make you a 128 of your sounds and put it into a folder and everything. So the problem is this one-shot recorder, I guess not that many people were using it, and the person who made it, Divine Machine Software, never updated it past 32-bit. And now that all of the DAWs are not 32-bit anymore, this device is gone. You cannot run it on a 64-bit DAW. It's out of date. It doesn't work, and you cannot replicate that feature in Ableton. So it's really kind of frustrating, right? There's not really any solution to this for Mac, which is a bit annoying. The best thing that I could find for Mac was this Tom Cosm one-shot Max for Live recorder. This does not have threshold-based sampling, but it can be MIDI mapped with a start and a stop button, and you know, you can use it, just like put it on your master. I'll show you how to set it up where it can actually be quite useful. So thank you, Tom Cosm, for making this free device. I would recommend that you follow Tom Cosm. He makes all kinds of incredible Max for Live stuff. He's a really cool guy. He's a great producer. I definitely would recommend that you follow Tom Cosm. And then I was doing some more Googling and trying to find a solution to this. And I found that the Fruity Loops DAW has this thing built into it, FL Studio. Because fun fact, FL Studio is not made by a big company. FL Studio is made by one guy. And that's why they don't have a Mac version of FL Studio. It's just Windows only, because it's like, it's not a team of people. ImageLine is like one person, and they're a genius. And they have this Edison device that is basically like a recording environment that you can see here. You can load this up as a VST anywhere in the chain. It's got threshold-based sampling. It integrates with the timeline in your DAW, so you can just leave it looping and like have all these different takes. Like these are different takes of looping. So they're doing basically a version of the loop menu technique that we might get into today if we have enough time. But if you're on Windows, this Edison device is very, very cool, and it can do threshold-based sampling. It's $99. is it can do threshold based sampling. It's $99. It can do threshold based sampling, and it can help you with this process. I've got a serum sound, and I've got this Tom Cosm one-shot recorder here. The one-shot recorder, the Tom Cosm one-shot recorder works like this. You can set destination, and then you specify like a folder. So I'll say here, iterative resampling, go into here, samples, and then say like recorded, and then that would be our folder. And then once you specify, okay, so I call this Cosm one-shot, right? And then each time I hit start, right? If I hit start on this, let's go up to here. Okay, so if I MIDI map this now, I'm going to MIDI map this to these keys on my, or I've MIDI mapped this to these keys on my MIDI Fighter Twister, which you can see is like just here. I guess I'm going to push over slightly. But I've MIDI mapped these two keys on the MIDI Fighter Twister so that I can hit start and stop on these two keys, and it will start and stop recording. So let's leave the MIDI map mode. So now if I hit start recording, stop, that makes one. Start, stop. Right, that makes another one, etc., 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 and it will populate this folder. So that's kind of a cool way to do it. And a lot of people will have basically a channel where, you know, this one-shot recorder will be sitting on a channel that is resampling from the master, and then you can be getting all of these different one-shots there. But I'm going to show you how to do it just with the transport of Ableton, because I think that's a bit better to know. And then Max for Live also is. It's a little bit of a temperamental thing. Like sometimes you get crashes and stuff. I know a lot of people will get crashes and freezes when they use Max for Live. And we can see here that, for example, my return to range icon here, this little orange guy is kind of glitching out a bit. I think that's from this. One-shot recorder. So here's what a lot of people will do. They'll take a track here. I'll just delete these unnecessary channels, and they'll set it up so it's recording from another track, and they call it resampled. Or you know, I guess I made a typo here. It said rec sampled, but this track is going to be basically sampling from this other track, and it's going to be recording all these different versions of the sound. So when you do this, you'll see a lot of people they'll make a big long recording where they'll have a big long recording where they'll just have things looping forever, and they'll make these big long recordings. But you can actually make a big long recording just by having the loop going, right? And if the loop is going, like let's say I were to record like this. Here, let's turn recording on. So let's say I were to record like this. Right, like that. Then this recording, even though it's looping on top of itself, it's not destructively looping, right? If you scroll this out like this, you'll see that this file has all of these different iterations, one after the other, you know, and you can see them all going one, you know, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. So just so you know that Ableton does behave like that, and so you can just loop a tiny little piece and just keep recording, and Ableton will not destroy your work when you loop on top of itself. So that's something to know about. That comes in very handy when you're doing the loop, when you're doing the loop menu recipe, which we might get into at the end of this. But what I like to do when I'm resampling is I will use these two commands here. Now these two commands on either side of the loop, these are your punch in and punch out. So let's say I wasn't going at bar 1 and I wanted to just record where the note is playing. If I specify the punch in and punch out there and there, right? Watch the behavior of this. Excuse me. Watch the behavior of the recording as we cross the beginning and end loop brackets. It will not record until we hit the beginning of the loop bracket. It will record there, and then it will stop immediately after. Watch. Look at that. Really cool, really useful. So I don't really see people using those punch in and punch outs very often when I watch other people's live streams, but it's really, really useful, especially as regards these resampling techniques.